Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sidelined, the podcast to get your fix while sports are in limbo. Here are your hosts, Abby Labar, Carlin Baith, and yours truly, John Root.
Welcome back to Sideline, guys. So excited to have you back listening. I'm excited to be back with you two beautiful people as well. And our next guest this week, holy cow, we had some great news come out about the NHL 2014 playoff format was released recently. And so we're getting closer and closer to hockey season. So not only was that exciting, but our next guest as well. You guys might know him as BizNasty.
When you guys think of the National Hockey League, you think of BizNasty. Not only did he play, but now he's a color analyst. He's a co-host of the biggest hockey podcast in the entire world, Spittin' Chicklets. So pumped that he's here.
Absolutely. And we talk about a lot of different subjects. We talk about how big his personality is, how it got him to where he is now, and how important it is for other NHL players to not be afraid to showcase their personalities as well. So we cover a lot of things. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it.
All right. Well, would you look at this? We reeled in a big fish. You see him chilling on the lazy boy right now if you're watching on YouTube, but he played 12 years in the league. We really get to talk about that a lot. He played for the Pittsburgh Penguins, played for the Arizona Coyotes, and now he's a color analyst at the Arizona Coyotes, as well as a co-host on Spittin' Chicklets. And most importantly, he's a Vancouver Warriors legend. Paul Bissonnette, welcome to Sidelined.
Okay, so we just had Richard Jefferson on our podcast, and he says he loves going on other shows because he loves the intros, because all of a sudden he gets that tire pump, and now I can get on with my day after this. That's a nice little confidence booster. So thank you very much for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure.
Of course. Well, we're stoked to have you on here, but we're all going through quarantine right now. Coronavirus is all over the world. So first and foremost, how have you been able to kind of hang out during this time and maybe even relax or, shut off your brain a little bit and make the most out of this time?
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting looking back. Like right away, I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, by the way. So one of the best, it was actually voted the best place to be in quarantine. Maybe the rules weren't as strict here, but the weather was beautiful, a lot of hiking. You were able to be outdoors. So as far as a personal level, I guess I was okay. I took the rules very seriously, learning how to cook a lot more. So that's been good. Focusing on the mental health and fitness as well. But also just from a business standpoint, I think this has shifted a lot of focus for a lot of people and maybe where the world's going. I mean, think about even like commercial space and offices, like maybe, can people work from home more? So it's, been shifting the focus of the pod. So it's been a busy time, but definitely an interesting one at that.
Focusing on health and fitness, are you a cook? I know since you're on the road a lot, do you actually get in the kitchen or is it all Postmates?
So the reason I've been becoming a better cook is because my girlfriend, who, I've been dating her for probably about 7 months now. She moved in. She came here from Florida. So she's an excellent cook, and she's been
for you.
Oh, I know. I'm finally growing up. I mean, it takes some guys I was playing with, they're 25 and I'm like, yeah, and I'm 35 and I'm like, this guy is more mature than I am. And finally I'm kind of getting there where I'd consider myself an adult.
Oh,
so it's nice.
So
Yeah.
is she teaching you how to cook?
She's been on her own for a while. She's a beast. She's a lawyer. When she was in grad school, is that what they call it? Grad school?
I think so.
Yeah.
No clue.
I have my grade 12 education, which if it wasn't for my mother, I would have never graduated because she used to help me write my essays. But we won't tell that to the high school. We'll give me my diploma. But she used to actually sell cars, used cars when she was in grad school to pay off her own schooling. So she is very, very independent and a beast, and I'm very thankful for her. So that's how I'm learning how to cook.
Biz, you talked about kind of the way that offices are changing and things have kind of been changing during quarantine. Has the podcast essentially remained the same? Because do you guys do a lot of remote recordings like we're doing right now, or how has it been functioning? And is anything kind of better or more streamlined because of all of this?
So we've got it down pretty good when it's just us three cooking. I mean, Grinnell chimes in a little bit, but interviewing over Zoom is a little more difficult. I love doing it live just for the feel and the time to hop in, and you could squeeze in those jokes where we often get criticized a little bit for interrupting guests. But part of what we do is the bantering. And it's like
Yeah.
being in the locker room where, I mean, in the locker room, guys were talking over each other because you're trying to establish that dominance, so to
You're
speak,
joking,
right?
you know?
Yeah, you got to get the ribbon, So
Yeah.
it's flying all over the place, and I know it's a little bit chaotic, but we're fortunate where we became very good on Zoom together,
Mhm.
and trying to get better and better with the interviews. But normally, if we can eventually get it all live all the time, which I contemplate, moving to Boston part-time in order to do so,
Yeah.
I would do it. So not many changes from a regular standpoint though on how we record.
So I know you're missing all of them for sure, but who out of those guys would you never want to be quarantined with?
Out of all my co-hosts,
Yeah.
I would probably say RA just because his maybe not though, because I would brush up on all my movies and television shows. So he's a movie guru.
Yeah.
And he's got weird sleeping patterns. I think he gets up late in the morning and he stays up late. So his clock is a little off. And I think that might be because of his old job and how he used to work the night shift a little bit. But I would probably maybe more lean towards Grinnell just because he's younger and he's probably got, younger things going on like parties or whatever it may be. So
I don't know. I see him on Twitch all the time. He's just video gaming.
that's true too. Actually, the younger crowd they're not as crazy as they used to be, and that even translates to the players nowadays. They bring their Xbox and stuff on the road, which
Yep.
is something that we had a hard time understanding at first. But considering that you can't drink and party like you used to and keep up with. I mean, Johnny, you're around these guys now. They're all shredded. Yeah. There's not much partying going on, and if you treat your body like that, you won't be able to be Joe Thornton playing at 47 years old or whatever he is now. And so now they resort to get their entertainment through video games as opposed to doing belly button shots. If you guys, I don't know if you guys.
What are those?
Johnny, I know you've been doing those in your Cancun trips or whatever you got going on.
John's been all over the world. He has been all over. He's been traveling more than all of us.
Are you girls a little envious that this guy's got the nicest hair on the pod?
Get out of here.
We literally talk about it all the time.
Biz, that natural blonde, these roots can't compete. Like it's just to die for. I'm so
It doesn't move either. It just
What was it called when you used to do the little strips of stuff?
The tips?
Tips. Yeah, so tips. You have natural frosted tips, Johnny?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, if there's a boy band looking for someone like me with tips like this, let me know.
All right.
I'll be the background.
Maybe we'll start one. We'll start with our first song, Pink Whitney.
Count me in. So I'll be the background dancer mostly.
I watched you guys' behind the scenes for that Pink Whitney commercial. How crazy was shooting that? And is it everything that you expected when it comes to legit show business?
With the legit show business, so to speak, there's a lot of standing around. And with what we do through Barstool, it's so choppy and it's very organic. I think that fits our style more. Although it was a very cool experience, and our commercials were on national television, which I never thought would be possible, especially given the fact that I was like a fifth line player throughout my NHL career. But it all moved very fast, and it was a very long, fun day. And we actually recorded a podcast after a 15-hour day of shooting. We did 3 little commercials over the course of that full day. So it was a wild experience, and the vodka has taken off, and hopefully down the road, we're able to do some other cool things with it.
You feel like you're still able to be yourself during situations like that, or do you have to ham it up a little bit more or tone it down, or what do they tell you to do in those?
Yeah, so it's interesting you ask. There was so much separation between what the producers had in mind and what our personality was, so it wasn't coming off very genuine, but we were able to alter it, and he was working with us throughout it, and it turned out silly. Maybe not what I would have done, and probably a lot less expensive. But hey, at least they were able to edit out the zits and shit on my forehead.
I need that.
Yeah. Oh, my nose looked a little straighter throughout the commercial, so I was very grateful.
Oh. Movie magic, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's nuts. They turned me from a 6 to an 8.
Biz, we've all seen you in kind of different elements here, and you play them all so well. So you've got like this professional side where when you're an analyst for the Coyotes, it just comes out so strong and professional. And I remember having you on our Fox Sports West intermission show, and you were just also extremely professional, but you got like a little bit nervous, you know, right before we go on. And I'm looking at you like, this is a star athlete, Calder Cup winner. Don't cut yourself down, by the way, of saying fifth liner. Calder Cup winner.
Forgot that in the intro.
Yeah.
Well, you said 12 years in the NHL, and I was like, yes. It was only 5, but I'll take it.
John, I'll give you this one because you're a Sharks guy, so you know you didn't want to mention Kings organization. It's fine, it's cool. You get a pass on that one. But Biz, you've got like almost like multiple personalities that you have to juggle here. And how do you kind of separate church and state when it comes to, you know, I'm wild. I've got my own personality, my own, you know, kind of persona on this Spit and Chicklets podcast that is you. And then do you have to dial it back when you're in like Hollywood land? And do you feel kind of stunted or stifled or anything? Or what's the balance?
Corporate world? I call it the corporate world. And rightfully so, because you have to answer to people, and they're also as a corporation or whatever it may be trying to keep a lot of people happy.
Yeah.
So great question. I know it was long, but you touched a lot of things there. I asked like 3-part questions. Like it's like choose your own ending, R.L. Stein book. But you mentioned me getting nervous before we did that hit. I always get very, very nervous before anything like on live TV or anything Coyotes related, because I know that my personality is a little looser than maybe what the general public is. So I would hate to like slip out and say the wrong thing and just put a lot of people in a very tough situation. And, you know, I'm a fairly sensitive guy. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, especially not on purpose, unless they're coming at me, and then I'll really go off the deep end. But yeah, so it is naturally very hard. And I found that finding the podcast as an outlet where I'm able to at least be more of myself and not deal with as much criticism, at least directly, it was good for me. And I finally see myself drifting more and more towards that, because putting on that corporate face it's exhausting, because it's genuinely not me. Like I want to be nice and say hi to everyone, but like having that little filter before I say everything, it makes you sound not so articulate and sometimes not very educated, which we talked about earlier. I'm really not. If it wasn't for my mom, I'm really not.
Oh.
Mama Bissonnette, she deserves a lot of love.
Yeah, which is surprising. She was a college professor and a very intelligent woman. She's probably like, oh, all the brains went to my daughter.
I was just going to go off of that. Have you ever had a moment in one of those corporate world situations where you did slip up and you were like, oh, that's probably something I shouldn't have said? Or like, I know here's another 3-part questions here on this podcast.
I love the 3
So you guys obviously pre-record a lot of most of your interviews for Spit and Chicklets. So when you're doing the pre-recording versus the live stuff, obviously you said it's harder to prepare for those, but like give us like an example of something that happened, like an embarrassing biz moment that was like truly embarrassing for you. You weren't doing it to yourself.
So probably like the funniest one that comes to mind, and there's never really been anything that's like been like, oh Jesus, like the one was when Todd Walsh on the Fox desk pregame, and we're live, and he threw it over. And remember, we always go through it one time, so we practice. I feel like sometimes I'm almost better off the cuff, because now I'm like worried about re-saying it the exact same way more so than articulating my thought. And I have this awesome thing ready to go, and he throws it over to me, and I'm like, I was like, Todd, I completely forgot what I was just going to say. I don't even really remember what the question was. And he's so good. He like laughed it off and like ended up throwing it over to Tyson, and we got out of that, and I felt embarrassed. But that was probably like the worst one, where I got a couple messages afterward about it. What was the other question? I forgot it. Kind of like Todd Walsh's.
It was kind of a part of it. It was just kind of a part of it, like the live versus like when you guys record interviews, and like live interviews is a big difference between recording them.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know, like interviewing someone, like you know, if you can't get them in the morning where maybe you feel fresher and it's later at night, you've done a bunch of work and you're not as fresh, and you know you're trying to ask your question and you kind of structure your sentence poorly, and you're like, and you get down on yourself. Guys, the reason why, like I always say hi to all the media members, is I understand how difficult of an industry it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you're constantly putting yourself out there, you're in front of everyone, and it's sometimes we can get down on ourselves because we want to do it our best, and I know the struggle that you guys go through, and I go through the same stuff, so we're all really in the same boat.
How do you?
So when it comes,
Unless you don't go through that stuff, and I'm fucking envious, and if anything, I'm gonna start trashing you.
oh, it's been an absolute breeze. I've never really had any trouble with talking to these girls about it. It's crazy. I can't wait till I have my
We're
first
perfect.
struggle, but
We're perfect human beings.
Yeah. Oh,
but
man.
when it comes to being a player and then an analyst, we were talking a little bit earlier about how there's a different side of professionalism. You understand the media side a little bit, but talk about your preparedness and what you've needed to do to work with different media members to make sure you're set up for a radio broadcast or an intermission or something like that after just being a player for so long.
Yeah, I think that right place, right time, and everybody here who works in media. So Tyson Nash is the guy who does the color in between the benches. We had the same exact birthday, very, very, very similar personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a former fourth liner who transitioned into the radio position as color and then eventually worked his way up. So having him here was huge for me because the transition was so much easier having someone know exactly what I went through. We're the same person, essentially. Then Todd Walsh, I mentioned him, Jody Jackson, who's incredible, Matt McConnell, and then, of course, my right-hand man in radio who does the play-by-play, Bob Heathouse, who's so professional and well-prepared. I came into an incredible situation, and I'm forever grateful for it. So my personal experience, I think that I was able to transition so well because of the people around me. And, you guys work for great teams too, Johnny. Like, you guys do it right. You're with the Kings, and then now Carolina, you've been there for 3 years where, I mean, it's been a steady rise for you guys. So I think all of us have been fortunate to be involved in organizations where there's good people around to work with.
And one of the things that, like, I always think when I, talk to analysts and, we talked to Nick Gizmani. I don't know how well you know
Yeah,
him.
I know Giz. Yeah.
Oh, he was
For
great.
Chicago?
Yeah, he was our first guest. So he was awesome. But, guys that have played before, you always think like, oh, it's going to be so easy for them. Like the analysts are, for me, especially like the outside looking in, I didn't understand hockey. I had to teach. I'm still learning every day. And even these other guys, Johnny, like for you, you're a good example of it too. Like as a guy getting into the business, it seems so easy, but if it was so easy, everybody would be doing it, especially like from the analyst side of things. And so, you make a good point about the transitioning, and a lot of the interviews you did early about transitioning, I feel like you very well admitted, like it's tough.
Well, and especially for you guys, it's not very rewarding at the start because you're not seeing a ton of feedback, maybe because you don't necessarily have these massive followings, and especially for you guys, there might be less leeway. Whereas, as a former player coming into it, I never once thought it was going to be easy because I always had that interaction with the media members constantly because I knew what they were going through as well. Because I was a healthy scratch, so I was hanging out in the green room just as much as them and in the press box, right? So I'll always try to be as supportive as possible because doing this in this industry, you have to take your lickings as well and work your way up the totem pole. So I would say that maybe as a player, I might have been a tiny too critical of when announcers were being a little bit critical, but it's so hard for them because they have to keep their credibility, but try not to bash the players as much as possible. So transitioning into the media side of things, I marvel at how good some of these guys are that I might have been like, meh, beforehand, because I'm not very polished and good at it.
Do you feel like it was a blessing in disguise, like how your career worked out then? Because obviously getting into the league, you want to be just that superstar that's like always hounded by the media and making the big contracts and stuff like that. But you got thrown into like, you're a fourth liner, you're getting scratched a lot, you're not playing a lot. So you have to think about like what's after hockey. And especially after you got hurt. Cup. Yeah, and you won the Calder Cup, but you're able to like still hang around. Calder Cup champion.
No, that's a great question, and I think I always like to perform, and that always came out. Like my quote unquote art was playing hockey, and as I got to the higher levels, you realize how good these world-class players are. And I was so fortunate to squeak in because fighting was still relevant. And I was able to adjust my game from just being a solid defenseman to squeaking in that role because I wanted to experience the NHL life. Nobody forced me to do it. I fought because I was willing to try to get there. So when I realized that I wasn't able to really perform much at the NHL level, my focus kind of shifted to doing it via Twitter and, take it for what you will. That's how it all started. And then it grew from there. So I was very fortunate that I was able to carve something out in order to remain in the game of hockey because it gave me everything that I have and I still love it. And I'm a jock sniffer as much as the next guy.
So,
you want to go?
yeah, well, mine's quick.
No, let's do a rock, paper,
fighting.
scissor. Live rock,
I'm
paper,
ready.
scissor.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, shoot.
Oh, come on.
No, that was
I just
scissor,
did
scissor.
that too.
That was scissor, scissor. A mangled pair of scissors, but they were scissors.
Okay.
One more time. Ready?
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
No.
Go, all right.
We never go paper after
There,
scissors.
that was
What
a
am I
fair
doing? Go, Carlin.
All right. So your personality, you grew it like on Twitter, essentially. And that I remember I started following you because I was like, what is this? Who is this? What is
It
he
was
doing?
craziness. It was
Why
craziness.
is he so funny? What's going on? He's a hockey player. What's happening? He has a personality. This is nuts. Like,
Yeah,
what's happening?
shocker.
So, but I feel like we know a lot of hockey players collectively, all of us, tons, right? And I feel like showing your personality as an NHLer can be so difficult sometimes, depending on your team chemistry, depending on even maybe who's your coach at the time. Like, it can just be really easy to have a personality, or it can be really, really difficult. What has been your experience with that and kind of blossoming into the person that you are and knowing that it is not easy for NHL players to have a voice and to have this persona like you do? Like, it's really not. And it's kind of sad too, because some funny people who the world doesn't get to see as that, and how kind of heartbreaking that is.
Yeah, I think that, well, you said the word personality, and some of them, it's just not in them to want to do those things publicly. They're very private people, some of which are just very soft-spoken, and some, they do a lot of the thinking in their own head as opposed to maybe me blurting it out and then thinking about what I say. And I mentioned growing up earlier, that's starting to change slightly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm fortunate because I played and I know the guys and hear about the guys who do have them. So that way, when they do come on, there are things that I hear about them and I can ask them about them to try to build them up and make them seem more interesting. I think they're all interesting in their own way. Just some aren't great at delivering it via media. And another aspect that you start understanding is some of these guys and the money they make and the responsibility they have on the ice, they just rather not bother with saying the some little thing that's going to be twisted and then blown up, and then now that's taking their focus away from the task at hand, which is, I mean, some guys are making $11-12 million to put the puck in the back of the net.
Mm-hmm.
And if they haven't done so for 4 games, they're starting to feel the heat.
Yeah.
And that's something that I never had to deal with, especially at that level. I mean, in junior, sure, there might be the odd fan because I was supposed to be one of the better defensemen on the team, so you bear a brunt of the blame. But to the level of a Jeff Carter or a Jonathan Quick or a Kopech, I would never know that. So I can completely understand as to why they wouldn't even want to bother. That's why we should embrace the guys who do, and also go out there on the ice and deliver on a regular basis. Those guys are just very special people. And I mean, who would be a good example of that? I mean, PK.
Yeah.
PK's a machine, dude.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with him and Lindsay and all their social media stuff. It's amazing.
And so he was taking criticism at the beginning of the year because the team wasn't playing very well. And this is something I'd like to even ask him on the podcast, where I'm assuming he had a schedule with rolling out his YouTube channel and show. And New Jersey had an awful start after what people thought was going to be a very good start. And he didn't skip a beat where, hey, like that's his personality. That's his separation from his task at hand. And maybe if anything, it helps take his mind off of the negativity that's going on at the rink. So guys like that are helping grow the game. So anyone really in the game, even if they might not like the antics involved,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, this guy's is putting more money in your pocket. If anything, I chuck him a retweet. You know,
Do you think that that'll ever kind of go away, or do you think maybe
it is.
the spotlight will always kind of be on like what's PK and what is he doing and why is he why does he have a YouTube channel? Like I feel like there's this like tug of war.
Well, it's hard. It's hard for any person over the age of really 35, 40 because it's all these games are traditional.
Yeah.
The leagues that have been the most successful are the ones who let the personality shine. NBA soccer players are they're outspoken, they get the fashion off the field. And I think that what the NHL is figuring out is that you need to be focused on your next wave of consumer.
Yeah.
Which are people that are on TikTok, which are people that I'm not on TikTok. I don't get it. But I know that it's the most downloaded app of all time.
Matt Luff on TikTok right now is just like the most entertaining thing in the world. That if you need a future guest on your podcast, Matt Luff. Just God.
Yeah. So I played with Luffer. He was with Ontario. I love Luffer.
Yes.
He came in. I think he spent his entire signing bonus on designer belts. This guy had Fendi and Gucci and Louis Vuitton belts with all of his suits, and I'm like,
no wonder he's good at TikTok.
Did you save 1 penny of that signing bonus that the Kings gave you? But going back to that, it's for the same reason that when this pandemic went down, we lost a lot of our commuters. So I think 15 to 20% of our listeners had dropped, but that happened across all platforms.
Sure.
With podcasts. So I said, well, streaming is becoming a bigger thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's shift the focus. Let's start streaming. Let's start this Chicklets Cup tournament with EA. And then we ended up getting a sponsor. And, now we're learning about that industry, which seems to be one that not only do players like, but fans do as well. And they can now see the player's personality where they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not them talking a lot, but it's their skills that at EA. So it goes back to something that the traditional fan might not be accustomed to nor like, but it's like, hey man, too bad, so sad.
Yeah.
That's where the marketing dollars is. And that's where the business, we're running a business here. And if anything, maybe it allows them to shift to the streaming aspect of where more people are consuming their product and their business is growing because people are seeing it in other facets. So it's such I can understand all sides of it because I won't jump on TikTok because I just don't understand it. And people generally like to shit on things that they don't understand. And what I'm finding as I get older, especially with having a business, which I consider Spittin' Chicklets a business, is if you stay stubborn, you're going to fail. You're going to fail.
Yeah. And then the branding aspect of all this too, I think we've constantly had the conversation ever since I started working in the NHL is the personality aspect. We talk about PK Subban. Yep. I think one of the worst things I've ever seen is when he was dancing in pregame and just getting crapped on by the broadcasters that like, he's not taking this serious. He's dancing to the music before the game. And you hear something like that. That was like years ago. And it's like, and then you look at the NBA. I know you guys like, not big fans of the NBA on Spittin' Chicklets, but I think just like you said,
we had Richard Jefferson on, so he's going to be our NBA analyst.
There you go.
Yeah. That was a big word for me.
What a league.
I completely get with what you're saying. And like, I hope that at the point when PK did come into the league and he was doing that, like, I would hope it would come from just like a strictly, they weren't comfortable with what he was doing on the ice and nowhere else. And I would imagine that is the case, but they were probably, shitting on it because it was just like, I don't know if they'd ever seen it before.
Yeah.
I would imagine that the guys talking had never, and it made them uncomfortable because somebody was doing something different. And maybe they were on a 5-game losing streak and they couldn't understand why this player wasn't, taking it seriously, where it's like, if that's how he wants to get in the zone, let him get in the zone, because if we were on a 5-game heater and he was the best defenseman in the league, you might, and at the time he might not have said anything.
Yeah.
And, or if it was a player from his own team. Maybe it was an opposing broadcast team. So once again, I think that just stems from the fact that they were uncomfortable because it was different and things were changing and people don't like change.
I hope things keep changing in that direction because it feels, it makes fans kind of get to know the players more. It doesn't even look like a flashy competition at some point, you know, oh, this guy's just doing it for attention or whatever. Like, it lets people into PK's lives when they get to see those YouTube videos. And then on our own team, on the Kings, like, I look at someone like Alex Iafallo, who is kind of quiet with the media, yet on his Instagram, he's posting GoPro videos that he edited of him surfing and like puts it to cool music. And I'm like, that's a passion of his. I sure hope no one craps on people like that are just trying to open up and showcase what they love, because I feel
100%. And a great example as to like maybe the negativity he would face by doing that.
yeah.
There's two sides of that one. I always think about how many people maybe who would have been, Ariana Grande talents, like world talents, had they not been shit on maybe the first time they did it. And if they quit, right? Then the other part of me says, well, like, that type of strength needs to be built up in order to eventually get to that point. So, you hope not too many people were pushed off to the side and discouraged by that. But I love seeing that, and I hope more and more guys are doing it. And going back to the NBA example, is I feel that these guys have become so much of their own personalities that somebody was drawn into that person and then became a fan of the NBA and that team.
Yep.
And I think
Well,
all these old heads and teams started realizing, okay, we can do this little ping pong effect back and forth where their followers are being bounced back and redirected to our page, which teams are doing. I think the New Jersey Devils were one of the first teams to do it. And Arizona has really picked up the social media game, as well as you guys in Carolina. But they were managing players on their team's accounts by sending them pictures to post and do it on a day-to-day basis, because it's just continuing to rebound traction back to their team and to their team store, and like check out this gear, and it's it's growing, and I think that the more and more NHL allows that to happen, they're going to see that they're going to have more eyes.
And we're talking about branding, and some of these people we've talked about already, they're superstars. Like, and you became a superstar on social media, whether you want to admit it or not. But you had like a big following, you built a big brand, but you went from fourth liner to first liner on social media. Like, you just look at that. Like, what a turnaround.
Put me in, coach.
That was good.
Am I starting tonight? Am I getting to stand out there for the anthem or what?
Get out there. You are not a healthy scratch. You're jumping in, baby. But people have realized that you don't have to be a superstar to build a big brand and to push the team's brand, to push the network brand, to push any sort of clothing brand. Like, I know I've read a few articles that you're just like, I want to go to a hospital visit. Like, I know I'm not like some superstar, but I want to go do this because I have the time. And then now I have a bigger brand. And that's why the Coyotes were probably interested in you, because you got a big personality, you got a big brand behind you, and you're able to utilize that to push more business into those places.
Yeah, I always like tell guys, even for the ones who aren't necessarily down, or tweet out their personal opinion on things, but more use it as like a charity thing or any type of following, because I just feel it's another door that you can open when you retire. And, part of why I'm so thankful about my post career is it's just occupied my mind. And I know a lot of players that come out of playing sometimes struggle to find, a reason to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
And I think that if you potentially open up that avenue, even if you are a guy who maybe made 50 million playing, well, maybe that opening up that avenue could lead to you running and occupying your time in order to help people and or stay in the game as an analyst, like John Michael Lyles started doing with the Colorado Avalanche. So I always encourage guys to do it, whether it's their personality or not, but use that platform for what you would want to. And you start seeing more and more guys too. So as I said earlier, I encourage all guys to just jump on it. And for me personally, it went from, I used to be a lot more vocal on Twitter. I don't do it so much anymore, just given the times and how politically correct you have to be, where I don't necessarily have as much fun as I used to. And there's always negativity coming at me, where I get to have my fun on the podcast. So we talked about transitioning focus. That platform in exercising it early on led to growing that following and now directing that traffic to something else I now enjoy more. And Instagram And you mentioned like working with brands and stuff. I like it. I like trying new things. I did that Vancouver Warriors. You gave me that quick plug off the top. It was a cool thing where we did this content for a lacrosse team that reached out of nowhere. And now that'll eventually lead to more jobs, because I've already gotten phone calls where companies are like, hey, could you do something silly and original like that for us? And it's like, sure, but it's going to cost you more than it cost the Warriors.
That's what I was going to say. Do you have to, like, do you decide which thing? Because I'm sure you get requests all the time for that stuff. And like, are there certain, maybe even bigger brands? I know, like, you see influencers and stuff all the time. Like, well, I'm not going to promote something I don't believe in. Like, have you had to say no to people before for personal opinion reasons, or usually like a, yes, let's do it, let's try it out kind of guy?
Yeah, I had a hard time, jumping on the promoting anything mask wise, because I wouldn't want people to get the thought that I was trying to profit off of that. And it was just a very weird time. So like those types of deals came at me personally where I was like, whereas I like to attach myself, like one is a CBD company. I'm very, very opinionated and speak highly of it. And Can I Brands is the name of the company. I use their products all day, every day, whether it be like an ointment for sore muscles or joints, whether it be to.
What's the discount code right now?
I usually do a Biz 20 or Biz 30, but yeah, Biz 20 became a pretty good joke within my circle just because of the promotions. Another one is like a hangover prevention cure that's all natural, as well as the CBD is all natural. So I like to align myself with brands that are usually doing the right thing and have the right message and things that I 100% would use. So, like even, we don't need to talk about the cannabis.
He's getting 100K for his promotions right now.
Yeah. Well,
on our podcast.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, is like, as far as the finances, like I never made a boatload of money playing, whereas like I enjoy business and that's part of my interest as well. So I'd be lying if I didn't say it was like for also financial purposes, but majority of these companies, I'd rather take equity because I believe in them and I want to see them grow because I use the products and I think that they can help people. I mean, Budweiser's another one. I like drinking beers. Pink Whitney. I like drinking vodka. I believe in anything in moderation. Some people might say, well, drinking's not healthy for you. Well, I like to have a good time and it takes some stress off once in a while, but it's been fun.
Do you have any
And then during it, my bad, Carlin, go for it.
I gotta
Rock, paper, scissors.
We're here to cut you off, Carlin. That's
okay.
That's
so
what
this
our
is a
job
prime example of how difficult it is on Zoom.
Yeah.
Because we have 3 hosts as well, whereas there's that split second where
Slight delay.
Yeah. So there
Well,
you're
I
getting a
think there's
firsthand
one-
experience.
Yeah, I think there's enough time, and I'm like, all right, no one's talking. And then John had that same thought, so then we're both like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, on a smaller scale, do you have advice for people who are kind of looking at the empire that you've built right now, and anything that you can kind of offer to someone as they're just starting out on, maybe they want to start a podcast or they've got a couple of friends that they want to start a company with? Is there one good like nugget of business advice that you're like, hey, take this and run with it?
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work. I work like 60 to 80 hour work weeks. Like it's nuts. Yeah, just like, trying to grow things. I got to talk to sales. I got to do this. What's going on with merchandise? And I think people, based on they're so dialed into social media now, they think that type of success is instant. Yeah, it is for some people, and they rode that wave, and that's just the way it is. But I started Twitter and like I wasn't getting brand deals. I was doing it for a good time, and it slowly grew. And I was fortunate enough where I was in the NHL, so of course I was going to gain followers just for that. So my advice would be like, if it's really what you want to do, it's going to take time and energy and sweat equity in order to do so. And on top of that, given the fact that you're in the environment where you're putting yourself out there, all while doing that hard work, you're going to have people telling you suck and your work's terrible and you're not funny and you're this and you're that. So it's just like, hang in there. It's a tough industry, but if you gut it out, it's going to be lucrative, and do it your way and be yourself about it. So it's hard, but it's rewarding.
And then we've also had to get like super creative during this time. Like, you've already set yourself up. You can do a lot of stuff from home, and you can record a video, you can send it to a network, send it to a brand. But how have you been able to get a little bit more creative during this time of quarantine where you can't travel somewhere necessarily, you can't have a big video shoot or something like that?
Well, we mentioned the streaming, so we've been doing the Chicklets Cup every Tuesday and Friday. Then, Michael Delzato, who plays with the Anaheim Ducks, I'm sure you guys are familiar, see him quite a bit. He does DJing on the side. So we had him, I was like, hey, why don't we get Delzato? We'll do a Pink Whitney Power Hour after the Friday live stream. We'll have fans watch on the IG Live, which will be hosted by the Spit and Chicklets One. And we'll have his former teammates like Tyler Seguin would pop by, request a few songs while jumping on with him. So that was just an idea I had where it's like, hey, let's, give something to the fans. So those little ideas is in whether how small or big they are, they start out as ideas. So you try them out. Many a times I've landed on my face, and it goes back to the advice you just asked me. Guys, I've failed at a lot of stuff. There's stuff that I look at and I'm like, that was cringy, but you tried it. And
yeah.
I begged Barstool and Ryan to do Pink Whitney, and they both told me no. And then me and my business partner, who I trust very much, we went and bought the domains, and we started the process of looking into things and learning this and looking that. So then, months later, Ryan Whitney's wife, while they were driving to a Halloween party, said, you guys should start doing that Pink Whitney drink. And then they called me and I said, perfect. I've already filed for the domains. We've been doing our homework. Let's bring it to New Amsterdam, and hopefully they're down for it. And we move on. That might have never became a thing, but you try to open up the door, you see where it goes, and it might end up being your mailbox money in your empire. And it all started from an idea that you just try and execute. And that's all it is, guys. I mean, you mentioned like trying to stay fresh and coming up with these ideas. Guys, I'm sure one of you sends an idea to the group chat, and the other two might be like, Guys, you know how many ideas I send to Ryan Whitney where he's like, Biz, shut up. Tons. But guess what? I sent him Pink Whitney so he can kiss my ass and listen to all my terrible ideas.
I love that you just did it though, regardless. We had JSB on here, Julie Stewart-Binks, last week, and she was talking about all the ideas like we all have during this time, and like not spreading yourself too thin. And you kind of have to sit down and prioritize like, okay, which ideas do I actually want to implement? And we didn't really dive deep into the conversation of, okay, well, let's, you can roll with some of these ideas, whether it works or not. And so that's a great point that you make. And I love that the Pink Whitney is part of that. So that's like the epitome of just like moving forward with an idea and then it coming to fruition later on.
And regarding this industry too, and I know some of my income, or I guess all of it, relies on other brands, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice to be eventually build something where like you don't have to answer to anyone. So, financial freedom and not having that stress, guys, is like, I think that's something that everyone probably strives for, or at least wants. And I think in going back to Julie, there's another prime example of someone in the industry where things didn't necessarily work out with Barstool. Yeah. But she didn't just quit. She got up, dusted herself off, transitioned, started a new focus, and now she's having success elsewhere. So it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So So good for her.
Yeah. Yeah. We loved her. She was awesome. Well, believe it or not, we do have some people that listen to this podcast, and they did submit a couple questions on social media. So we're going to ask a couple of those, and then we're going to play a really fun game with you, put you in the hot seat. So
sure.
John, do you want to start?
All right. If there's any one player in today's NHL you would love to fight, who would it be?
Oh my goodness. Johnny Gaudreau, because I'd get my first ever win. I'd finally win a fight, and it's Johnny Ham and Cheese, so he knows I'd be doing it just out of the sure fact that I needed the W. I'd pay for drinks after the game.
Oh my!
I was gonna say
Johnny Hockey versus BizNasty.
Yeah,
has got the
Johnny
reach.
Ham and Cheese.
Let's see how
Let's
it works
go.
out.
I actually, that's probably the wrong answer, because then Brian McGrattan, who works for the Calgary Flames, would be like Sting up in a catwalk of the arena, and he'd come down and power bomb me. I actually had to fight him twice in the American League towards the end of my career, and
Grattan or Sting?
I didn't have a good answer off the top of my head, but maybe actually a rematch against Ryan Reeves, because he speed bagged me in St. Louis, although I don't think I would have a snowball's chance in hell to beat that guy up.
Okay. For Canes fans specifically, somebody submitted this. What's the best in one story you have with Kami?
Oh my goodness.
If it's, I don't know if that's
No, oh no, like there's plenty.
inappropriate or not.
No, we just drink and have a good time and laugh. Like Kami is so harmless. I would say F1 in Montreal Grand Prix weekend. Now, for anyone listening, Montreal is a wonderful city. It is a totally different beast during Grand Prix. And I went there when I was playing in the NHL. So being a hockey player going to Montreal, you're kind of put on a pedestal. One of the best weekends of my life. And sure enough, Commodore was there, as were a lot of other hockey players. And I had a 3-day vacation planned to go there. And I ended up staying for 5 days with Kami, and we changed our flights twice. We backed it up one day and then another. And we ended up 45 minutes out of downtown after taking a limo to this bar because it was supposed to be the only bar that was popular in and around Montreal after the Grand Prix on a Monday. And it was dead. And I think when we got back in the limo and started heading back downtown, we realized how much damage we'd done to our bodies with the amount of partying. And that's when I believe that the In One brand began.
Best part of your lacrosse career? That was an Instagram question.
That was all a joke, and I think that the joke early on was a bit of an insult to the lacrosse community that I thought I could play pro lacrosse. That was a very, very eye-opening experience as to how bad I was. I thought I was going to be able to like maybe keep up. I couldn't cradle the ball. I couldn't shoot properly, and when you look back at some of the greatest hockey players to ever live, they played lacrosse growing up. It's a great way to get your hands going. Mm-hmm. We had Rob Schremp on our podcast recently, who was a tremendous lacrosse player growing up. And he actually didn't even pick up a hockey stick till I believe 11. Oh
my God.
So yeah. And not only that, but you're going to the net there and you're getting slashed and hacked and whacked. So you learn to toughen up at an early age and go to the dirty areas where you need to go to in order to score goals in the NHL.
I remember that whole saga with the lacrosse community being like, excuse me? You think what?
I was getting anthrax sent to my house and death threats and shit. I had to change my address. Lacrosse people are nuts.
I don't normally read the comments, but I was reading some of the comments when you were going through that process. I was dying. I thought it was so funny because people were up in arms. They were losing it because we know people can get upset about stuff on social media now, but it was almost like you said something really bad to their family. It was
well, you know what it was like? It was a dumbed down version of when oh God, come on, now I'm drawing a blank. The guy who played football, he ended up getting traded to the Rams. Jalen Ramsey, who I actually did an NHL first timer with in Nashville because he's from there. But remember when he said he could make the NHL in 6 months, and I don't think he'd ever put on skates, and the hockey community went nuts. I think we kind of gained it from that. And said, I think we should put a positive spin where I think I can achieve something, but yeah, nonetheless, got a lot of hate for it.
You shed some light on lacrosse, though, for people.
That was the goal.
What is this?
I was a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah. It all worked out in the end, honestly.
So we're gonna play a game. So you obviously say a lot of things all the time, everywhere, and so we pulled some quotes. Okay, but you have to tell us if these quotes, we're going to go one by one with each quote. You're going to have to tell us if this quote you said, okay, Wit said, or RA said. All right? We'll see how well you know yourself.
I think I'll be able to get this.
Yeah? Okay. All right. Who wants to go? John, go first.
Are you guys going to do the accents?
I can't do the accent.
No, I just fucking
that'll give it away, too.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know. That's why.
Yeah, no.
To be honest, I was trying to practice my accent before, and I was like, nope, not doing it on podcast.
Yeah.
I read them in my head in accent, but.
Do it.
All right.
Some of the people from California, if they listen to RA's voice, they would think he's from another planet.
He's
the
not?
first time I listened, I thought so.
Oh, I think that's what makes it
and
so
I'm not
unique.
from California.
Yeah, he's the man.
All right, let's start with this one.
Okay.
His Fruit of the Looms are just rock hard right now.
That's got to be Wit.
100%.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding.
All right, nice.
Good work. 1 for 1, Biz.
All right. Watching somebody's reaction to a well-executed crop dust is one of the many joys in life.
I don't think you would go back to back with Wit. I would say RA would say something like that because it sounded very articulate.
Are you sure you wouldn't say that?
Okay, then I said it. Damn,
It was articulate. It couldn't have been
yeah,
me.
that might be the smartest thing I ever said.
That one might be my favorite.
Damn, okay,
All
1
right.
for 1 or 1 in 1.
Yep.
Great. Guys, you have no excuse. My partner is on shrooms.
That's Wit.
Yep.
That's Wit. That's Wit.
Wits are
That's
so
Wit
easy.
talking about my natural remedies.
All right, we got this one. We got to keep an eye on his forehead to make sure there's no red dot from Soviet spies looking to whack him.
I would. That's either me or RA, but I'll go with RA.
All right, boom. He's talking to
Good.
Tim Stapleton.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
we've.
love that the only one you haven't
we-
gotten so far was you.
I'm pretty sure that all of us have been banned from entering the country of Russia for our podcast. And for those of you who don't listen to the Spit and Chicklets podcast, is we've had a lot of friends that have gone and played in Russia, and things just get ran a lot differently over there. The word corrupt could potentially be used, and just how odd it is.
Oh,
But
wow.
it's a different way. The players who have played over there bring those experiences to our podcast, which some of which are jaw dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we're just making light of it. Like, I think we can all laugh at it. I mean, if some people want to be upset by it, sure. Because I think that some of the players were at the standpoint of when they were there. So if you guys have the opportunity to listen to Tim Stapleton, Josh Hennessy was another guy who came on and told some wild Russian stories. They're pretty wild, guys.
Yep. That was RA talking to Tim Stapleton.
I got
I'll give a
This
quick
sounds good.
story that Tim Stapleton told on the podcast.
Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
When he was in Russia, he was given an apartment, and every time he kept coming back from these road trips, and mind you, some of them are 10 days, and they're flying 7-8 hour time changes.
Oh, jeez.
So he noticed every time he came home, the furniture would be like a little bit in a different place, and he thought he was going crazy, or maybe there was ghosts. So he had a groin pull, and he ended up having to travel back earlier than the team, and left the road trip. And he came back and he put his key in the door and opened the door, and the deadbolt was on. And the guy who owned the apartment, when they were going on their road trips, was staying there with the family. So he'd be moving in his family to live in Tim State. So he said he like opened the door, and then like I think like there was like translation, and he had to like call the guy. And I think that the first night, at least, he ended up spending the night on the couch, and then until the family could move out the next day, and then figure out to like, hey, like stop staying here when I leave.
Oh,
So like those are the like
God.
that was just a normal day in Russia
Crazy.
for Timmy
Oh my
Stapleton.
God.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Somebody would get arrested for that.
yeah. So we've had plenty of stories like that. So if you
That's
guys want to go enjoy them,
Oh my gosh. I'll have to listen. All right. We
All
got
right.
one more for you.
all right.
I only just started wearing underwear a month ago, and I never used to wear underwear until then.
RA doesn't go commando. There's no way. I hope not. Oh,
Are you sure it's not you again?
there's no way. I never go commando. That's not me. Let's go. I'm gonna go off the board. Grinnell.
Okay. All right. So you did go off the board, but you didn't go off the board far enough. It was Kim Kardashian. We got you there.
Okay. All right, Kim K. I don't know if you guys heard the most recent drama is her sister Kylie is not in fact a billionaire.
I
And
saw that.
and given the times, I think that's right where it should be at the top of the headlines, right?
Wow.
That's the most important thing we need to know about right
Yeah,
now. is
she's
her
not a billionaire.
financials.
They were fudging her net worth. So
And she's
maybe they're
very
not-
upset about it.
All right, yeah.
Very
Let's not
upset.
die.
Pepsi
Is there anything
wasn't
else you
big
guys
enough.
want to talk about? I think there was one more thing you guys said that was at the end.
I think that was it. That was like the
I-
yeah.
I think I would have one more question for you
Do it.
because a lot of
Okay.
this podcast is about like talking to different media personalities, what you're doing during this time, what sports are going to look like coming up. And now the NHL finally took it upon themselves to work with the Players Association, get something rolling. And now we finally have a 2014 playoff format. So what do you think about the NHL's decision to like get this rolling, get these teams working out together and finally get sports up and running again for us?
Yeah, I think it's amazing how they've been able to brainstorm and find out all these solutions to problems and try to make this work and bring back something, a sport that brings a lot of people joy. Of course, there's going to be concerns about safety. It's evident that there's some gap in time here before training camps will get back going, and I think that we'll see if there is a second wave of this stuff. But if they're able to keep everything safe and test these guys on a regular basis and continue play with no fans, I think that it's very commendable. And I like how hockey is at least the first North American sport to seem to have figured things out to move forward. I mean, I would imagine basketball follows because they're very intertwined. Bettman was very open about his relationship with Stern and now, of course, Silver, and just the progressiveness of the NBA. And I think that Bettman's trying to follow that.
Mm-hmm.
And then with baseball arguing about the money aspect, and then NFL, not sure. I think it's just nice that the NHL was first. They're being leaders, and they're also trying to do so in a very safe manner. So if it doesn't end up getting off the ground, at least they were able to try to problem solve and get this to where we're all watching hockey again. NHL gets hammered for like every little move, and I don't really see like the need to like
People
it's crazy.
Better not boo Bettman this year once the Stanley Cup.
If he's able to execute this, and I know that there's things in the past he's had to do in short-term pain for long-term gain, but look where the game's gone, and it's growing worldwide, and a lot of negativity online. I think I'm maybe getting sucked into it too much sometimes, but I think we're going to see hockey here, guys.
Fingers crossed. It'll be a good day when we do.
You guys were awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.
I hope your listeners enjoyed it, and best of luck and continue to support in your guys' careers.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Biz. Really appreciate it, brother.
You're awesome.
Oh, yeah, and go Coyotes. Suck it.
Yeah.
Suck it.
Well, you guys knew for sure that he was totally going to bring all the stories with him. We had lots of laughs, and we hope you guys did as well, along with some awesome advice and tips and pointers that he brought in, especially about the business side of the industry and branding as well.
It's nice hearing, too, that hard work kind of prevails over everything. I think a lot of people want to hear the easy solution or the quick fix or the how do I get there now? And it's nice to hear someone say, oh, it's a lot of hard work. There's no secret. It's just that. So it was kind of reaffirming in my own life to hear that. And I'm sure for a lot of people as well, it's not an overnight success. Like, look at all these years that he put into this fabulous career to get to where he is now.
And we have so many different personalities that have come on this podcast as well. A lot of people that were set in stone. I'm getting into broadcasting, but sometimes you got people like Biz that started the athletic side of it where they were actually playing. So that translates into the broadcasting side of things, but doesn't mean that it's easy at all. So it's fun to hear about someone that's taken themselves from the league to the broadcast booth to building themselves up as a huge brand. And speaking of huge brands, we're not a very big brand yet, but I think we have potential. Sidelined Pod is blowing up, people, and it wants to blow up because you follow us. You can follow us at Sidelined Pod on Twitter or Instagram, and make sure that you can listen to all of these podcasts on your favorite podcast network and on YouTube so you can see our beautiful faces. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. We love you, Biz. We love you, followers. We love the questions we got this week. Bye-bye.